everyone. My name is Bernadette Smith. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm CEO of Equality Institute. And Erma, would you please introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. My name is Erma BreAnn, and my pronouns are they, them, theirs. So excited to be here, and happy Monday.
Awesome. Well, if you're just joining us, this is 5 Things in 15 Minutes, which is my weekly LinkedIn live show with a special guest every week in which we talk about good vibes in DEI. Because what I've found is that there's a lot of stories about what's going wrong, about, negative data, what companies are doing wrong. But I prefer to focus on what's going right, the stories that give me inspiration and hope. And every week I write a newsletter called 5 Things. It goes out on Saturday mornings. And I share those stories of inspiration and hope. And you can subscribe by going to theequalityinstitute.com/join. And then on Monday, I'm joined by a special guest, and we do a little video recap of those 5 things, bringing good vibes to DEI every Monday. All right, Erma, so let's get going with the first story, which is really about, finally making it right. So you might know that Activision Blizzard, which is a video game company, came under a lot of fire, some lawsuits, because there was a culture of harassment, a very bro culture at this video game company. Well, they finally, after a couple of years, really pulled it together. And what I'm really impressed by is how they're making it right in a very systemic and authentic way. First of all, the CEO reduced his salary, his overall compensation, to about $62,000 until the various goals were met. And some of those goals include $250 million committed to building a pipeline of underrepresented talent, hiring goals for women and non-binary employees, and just a major culture shift. So pretty good news, right? I mean, it's an example of how putting your skin on the line can really hold you more accountable.
Yeah, I think that's the thing is really moving towards seeing what it looks like to be accountable, in a systemic way. And I think that it was amazing to read about it, especially in the gaming industry where it's just like overly dominated by cis men. So to see that was really amazing.
And this is a CEO who made $150 million last year. So he has plenty of money, and cutting his compensation to $62,500 is not going to hurt him at all. But still, it does send, I think, a powerful message to the rest of the employees.
It really does. It shows that, people who do make that much money can really make a difference and, lead and be an example of what it looks like to, in this capitalist society, to use that money to make change.
Yeah, I agree. And one thing that I thought was really interesting about the story is that in his apology and in his, decision to take this massive pay cut, he also was like super sincere in the apology. Like, it was clear that he really got it, that he understood the damage that had been done. And by really kind of taking that responsibility, I think it can help other employees take responsibility as well. Like, it's contagious. When we pass the buck and we blame others, that's contagious. And I think taking responsibility is contagious as well.
It really is. I often say that, especially when those people that are in power take leadership and voicing, their thoughts and their, being sincere about it. It comes, people are more acceptable to, receiving that information versus like hearing it from those people that have been harmed and being oppressed. So it really shows the importance of being an ally.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, all right, next story is from Mastercard. I was impressed by Mastercard a year or two ago when it introduced the True Name card, which allows folks to use their not their birth name. If they haven't changed their name legally, they can still get a Mastercard with their chosen name on it. And so it's a really big win for trans and non-binary folks. But Mastercard continued that amazing inclusion by releasing it's called the Touch Card, and it has on its end little notches that indicate whether the card is a credit card or a debit card or I don't know, some other kind of card. But it essentially has different shaped notches for folks who are blind and visually impaired. And it's pretty amazing. I mean, it's the simple things. I don't even think about that kind of stuff, but it's really cool that, you know, and that it's another way to be inclusive.
Yeah, I totally agree. Because when we think, kind of like in this world, we're so caught up in like how we navigate the world, and so to see, you know, Mastercard really trying, like really tapping in on these different areas and these different marginalized groups, like this is absolutely amazing.
Yeah, it really is. I think it's super cool because, you know, not only was it just a great idea, but it also was vetted and tested by several major organizations that support the folks who are blind and visually impaired. I mean, there are so many people who have visual impairment, 2.2 billion around the world. And although I'm sure plenty of them live in underdeveloped countries where there's not, you know, a need for MasterCard, still, it does have a very, very wide ranging impact.
It does, and
Okay.
it also is, I also, it shows like the importance, like including people into the conversation instead of like creating something that you think other people would want, but really bringing in the folks that you're looking to help, to develop these things.
Yes, absolutely. All right. So next up is the Mayo Clinic, and this is I saw this story from Karen Catlin on Twitter, and the Mayo Clinic now provides disposable hijabs to its patients, and I saw this because this Muslim woman tweeted a photo of herself in this disposable hijab and was giving a shout out to the Mayo Clinic. I mean, it's super, super thoughtful, super impactful. I mean, it just helps folks feel seen.
Yeah, anything, of this type where, you know, when you're going into, you know, medical procedures, that your anxiety is already high, and to not like be affirmed and be able to be in your identity and feel safe and all of these things, like this is really important. Like we don't all, you know, Muslim, or, you know, in any religion that you're wearing this, we don't know how important that is, but this right here, you know, it really touched my heart to see that as well.
Yeah, and just the pure joy and elation on the, you know, in the tweet and in the story from the person who shared that. I mean, it's just really powerful to it's just you know, these stories have to be told, and
Yeah,
seeing her elation, I guess, just shows how rare this is, and I consider that a really big win. And hopefully, it's something that other healthcare providers start to buy as well, because there are a ton of Muslim women who would love that, love to feel seen in that way.
right.
Uh, all right, next up is a Spanish language ad from Doritos celebrating Dia de los Muertos, Day of the Dead. Now, in this animated ad, the family is celebrating, and you know, one of the folks who shows up in Day of the Dead is their uncle, and he appears, and then his partner appears and they're talking to the family, and the family said, oh, we're so happy that you're not alone. And so the uncle was gay, sounds like he was alone throughout most of his life, and now has a partner in the afterlife. And it was just really beautiful, and it's not something you see a lot of in Spanish media and Spanish advertising, is this type of inclusion. And I mean, even in English speaking countries, it's still the exception, not the rule. But I just found this a really sweet and powerful ad.
Yeah, it really is, especially when a lot of like media, you know, has this notation that like people of color, like communities of color, aren't accepting, and so to see this again, I this whole all of these stories really like definitely touched my heart and like gave me all the feels of, even in my personal life, like honoring the Day of the Dead, and coming from like communities where we did that. So being like a queer person, it just really touched me as well.
That's really cool. Yeah, I mean, I've never celebrated that with in any part of my family or any part of my past, and so I can imagine that it's especially meaningful to folks for whom that's just a really important tradition.
Yeah.
And representation really matters. You know, who knows? Maybe there's an older gay closeted man in Mexico who's going to come out. You know, who it's like these types of stories have an impact that
Mhm.
that we just don't know what it could be. And I love that these stories are being told. All
Yeah.
right. So next up, last story for this week is that what I've noticed is a trend in Europe. Kellogg's is now providing its employees in the UK with paid leave for fertility treatments, menopause, and miscarriage. And that is available to all employees who experience those health conditions and who need reproductive health care. And that's pretty cool, you know, that level of inclusion. But beyond that, managers are actually being trained on how to talk about menopause and pregnancy loss. And so the idea here is to destigmatize it by not only offering paid time off, but also giving managers the tools to normalize these conversations.
Yeah, that right there really took it to like the next level, because these conversations have been like taboo and we don't talk about them, especially at work, and people have to navigate these before going back to work, and especially with miscarriages. So for managers to be trained on how to have these conversations really opens up for an affirming work environment.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, hopefully these trends that I'm starting to see in UK and European companies make their way to the US because
Oh yeah.
we are a long way, well, maybe slightly closer than we were, you know, 6 months ago, but we are a long way from having paid time off, universal paid time off, or universal paid PTO requirements. So it's certainly a,
Right.
you know, it's kind of cool to be inspired by what's happening overseas as well. All
Yeah.
right. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Irma. Thank you, everyone, for watching 5 Things in 15 Minutes. If you don't already get the newsletter, please subscribe at theequalityinstitute.com/join and meet me back here next week for another 5 Things in 15 Minutes. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.